r/AskReddit. Ex-homeless redditors, what was the scariest thing that you ever saw on the streets? Kids beating the crap out of a homeless man. Started with them spitting on him. He gets up and runs after them. Then a couple of them hit him from behind with some icky looking wood. You know, the one that snaps easy. He gets mad and they run off. He comes back to the bench and falls asleep again. 10 minimums later they're back and they just start beating the ducking crap out of him. I had to jump in and stop them. Thank you for helping the homeless person. This thread is filled with comments like this and it's honestly mortifying. I didn't do much, just yelled and threatened to fight. But it was enough to make them run. A few weeks later they seen me in a park and tried to jump me. Older brother was with them this time. FYI, these kids were like 14 to 17. Octobro was 21 to 22. I tried to explain what they're doing and has like don't threaten my brother etc. I don't know how you can back up family members that are completely scumbags. I expected him to apologize or at least understand why his dipshit little brother was wrong. A woman giving birth at a bus terminal. Was she okay? An ambulance showed up and helped her out. I didn't hang around, but it looked like they had it under control. God, please tell me this wasn't the US ambulance. Was homeless for a summer and an acquaintance through the party scene of the town invited me to crash on her couch. Woke up in the middle of the night to her screaming into her phone about how they are out to get her and are setting the world up for destruction. Pretended like I was still asleep and got out to there the next day real quick. Smart move leaving. Otherwise, back quote, they might have targeted you too. Let's see. Funny. Ash. Guy at the shelter I stayed at got stabbed in the ribs by another guy. The guy who stabbed him just walked inside and attempted to go to sleep while the guy who's stabbed is sitting on a bench literally spurting blood out of his side and he lights a cigarette. When the staff called 911 and tried to help him, he was pushing them off saying he was fine. Horrible. There was a gas station down the street. A guy paid for gas, took the hose, and doused himself in gasoline. I was smoking outside, and I remember him walking by outside the yard area with a lighter in his hand, arm fully extended out. He was very mentally ill, so I didn't think anything of it. I couldn't smell gas or anything like that. I continue to smoke, light another one up. About 10 minutes later I'm inside bullcrapping at the front desk and a dude runs in the front door and shouts, "Give me wet towels." A guy set himself on fire across the street. Homeless shelters aren't in good areas, so I just walked out casually thinking some idiot at the apartments across the street had set a rug on fire and the dude who ran in was just being a dumbass. I walk out the front door and sure enough, on one of the stairwells there's flames. My thought process was basically, yep, some dumb fucks let her roo. Oh fuck. The rug sat up. Me and 3 other guys ended up being the ones to put him out. He wouldn't though. I don't know if the gas had to burn off first, but probably. I don't really remember putting him out. I just remember after. I don't remember a smell or anything. The morbid thing I do remember is he was out and he just kept shouting, "My balls. My balls are on fire. Put out my balls." He died 3 days later. I was told it wasn't the first time he'd done something like this. The shelter ended up sending me to therapy, and the woman was the best therapist I'd ever had. I still get weird sometimes, and can't really watch people on fire in movies anymore. Cold weather. I thought I was going to die one night. I was so cold. I remember waking up thinking you need to move, or you are going to die. This was the scariest thing for me. I ended up sleeping in buses, burning sterno. It's like jelly dropping alcohol that burns for a good while. I would try to constantly be walking cause if I stopped I'd probably fall asleep and die. I also sometimes rested under a bridge from time to time. One time I fell asleep under the bridge and I woke up finally feeling warm and cozy and thought it was nice to finally be able to rest. Then I realized that it's way too cold for this and I can't move without that frozen fingers pain everywhere. Struggled real hard to get my sterno out and could barely bend my fingers enough to light it. Like my hands were nearly useless. I'm really glad I woke up. This feeling is really scary. I don't think I've been as cold as you, but once I was camping in the cold, soaked, with no warm clothes. I woke up every 30 minutes with a different part of my body getting numb, having to readjust just to go from very cold to less cold. When I got moving the next day it felt like I was cold to my core and it took hours to warm back up. I will never forget that feeling and now take the cold way more seriously. FY I was not homeless, just hiking with little to no preparations. I had a similar experience. I think sometime before dawn my body started to shut down. I had this vivid dream that my two best friends were sitting next to me watching me shiver. I felt feverish, hot and cold at the same time. One was shaking her head and saying I'm so sorry, I'll miss you so much, and the other was crying. I remember feeling terrified and thinking this is how I'm going to die. It's so nice that they came to watch over me and then I passed out. I woke up and the sun was up. It was almost 9 AM. It took me almost 6 hours to feel warm again, as if my core was thawing all day. Made it to my car eventually and went home super anxious. I'm very lucky I didn't have the energy to strip off all my clothes that night. Probably would have died of hypothermia. Lots of stabbings and rapes. I was stalked by a gang one night on my way home from work. I still have no idea how I wasn't raped or mugged. Once I woke up suddenly to a not homeless man holding a huge knife staring at me inside the abandoned building's basement I was sleeping in. Once he noticed I was awake he asked if I was Russian. I said no, and he said he was looking for a different girl, gave me $20 and left. Not sure what the word is in English, but this guy could be a member of the Russian mafia/flesh market. Probably was looking for a runaway prostitute. Edit. The word isn't bratwa, it's a specific word for a gangster that collects runaway prostitutes. I'm blue-eyed and blonde, so I'd have to deal with people thinking I was Russian way too much. Now that I'm out of that life, I still get spoken to in Russian all the time. Oh god. I was homeless in Seattle for many years. I've seen some horrible things ranging from bum fights that ended in one of them dead, to people next to the downtown masses stepping over an overdosed dead body that they thought was just someone sleeping. But the worst thing was probably seeing this methed out drug dealer guy who, at the time, had a bad reputation already on the hill, throw a 15-year-old homeless teen girl over an overpass bridge onto the freeway. She was killed. In my years, being a homeless junkie and then cleaning up kinda and working at a homeless shelter / on the street, I saw a dude try to murder his girlfriend with a machete, like full on swing and barely miss, and my heart was pounding, like I was sure I was about to witness a murder. I also saw countless odds and shit. Saw a girl beaten to shit who had just been raped asking for help. Saw a dude get stabbed. Saw a big huge dude have a heart attack and die and the paramedics frantically trying to give him chest compressions and shit, and he was just flopping around. Saw a lot of shit honestly, but those were the ones that come to mind as scaring the shit out of me the most. I have a million stories from those years and half sound fake cause they are so ridiculous. There was a girl who was new to the shelter and looked way young. She was taking dudes into an alley outside and asking them for drugs and money and shit, and she was obviously ducked up out of her mind. Her friend came over and asked to talk to me and told me she was only 14 and ran away from a juvenile home. There was like an alert she was missing. Just then I saw her leaving with 2 dudes to go duck them, and I knew the dudes. I called them over and was like, yo, get out of here now, this chick is 14. Man, I had already called the cops. I stalled and kept her talking to me until the cops came, and when they got there and searched her, she had like a gram of black tar, a bunch of meth pipes and meth, and she told the cops she didn't know what she did cause she let some dudes shoot her up. She was ducking 14. The cop legit told me, you probably saved this girl's life. This hilarious black lady was drinking vodka from a Pepsi cup and the police were asking her questions and stuff cause she was super drunk, and she started screaming suck my peen through a straw bra. I also saw a dude drinking hand sanitizer from one of those pump type bottles, and I asked him, dude, are you drinking that? And he's like, no, and I told him, man, I just saw you drinking it, you're not in trouble, it's just dangerous man, it'll poison you. And he's like insisting he's not drinking it, and even if he was, it was water anyways. I said, if it's water, spray it in my hand. He said okay for some reason, pumps a handful of obviously jelly hand sanitizer into my hand, and I just like stared at him, and he ran away, lol. After a meal at a local shelter one night, I fell asleep in a park. I hated being around there at night because some of the other homeless would rob you. One guy got knifed a week earlier and I needed to GTFO. So I started to make my way out of the area, taking alleyways as not to attract the drunks who would throw shit at, beat up and generally harass the destitute. I heard a commotion and decided to investigate and saw this crazy animal of man, naked from the waist down, on top of someone, I assume a woman, thrusting on top of her. Every couple of seconds he would stop to throw a punch. The woman was unconscious, completely limp and very bloody. I yelled out to him, and he turned to look at me. I have seen a lot of bad things in my life, but the look in his eyes was beyond animalistic. He was filthy, but in the little light from the street lamps his eyes glowed with rage and insanity. Scared the crap out of me. So afraid that I took off, ran to nearest payphone, 1993, and dialed 911. I did not go back. I have felt like such a coward, and have no idea what happened to either one. I truly hope she's okay, and he is dead. No cowardice here. I came upon a similar situation once on a lunch break. Guy beating a woman horribly bad. All I did was yell hey. And the ducker rushed me and stabbed me. You did the smart thing. I had been homeless for a couple weeks now, and had made friends with this couple. They seemed pretty chill, but had a bit of a drinking problem. Anyway, one night I was sleeping, could hear some commotion going on, couldn't make out who it was or what was going on until my buddy comes and sits on my sleeping bag, blood pumping out of his neck, like full on every time his heartbeat it would splurt out. Not under huge pressure, but it was pretty bad. I asked him what happened, and he said he think his missus had cut his throat with a Stanley blade. He was so drunk he was not aware of how bad his injury was, and insisted I did not call an ambulance. So I called the police, they called the ambulance. I see the dude a couple days later, still homeless, scar on his neck. He's ever so grateful the nurse had told him how lucky he was. He was literally a couple millimeters away from dying that night. Edit. I'm no longer homeless. This all happened about 6 years ago now. I no longer speak to him. This is another long story. She was arrested but not charged. Last year she committed suicide, so she's no longer with us. LPT. If a random drug dealer asks you for a ride home, don't say yes. If you do say yes, have extra keys with you. Almost got raped. After driving a random drug dealer, I bought drugs from home. Dude stole my keys out of the ignition and said he needed his dick wet if I wanted my keys back. Pretended to start crying to make things awkward. He got out of the car with my keys, locked doors, got my spare keys out, and floored it out of there. I was staying in a homeless shelter that had a men's side and a woman's side. Most of the men were convicted sex offenders. In the 8 months I spent in that hell on earth, I was friends with 3 women who were raped by some of these men. The truly scary thing, the women were actively discouraged from telling anyone what had happened, especially the police. If they filed a report with the police, they were permanently barred from the shelter. That place, one of the most celebrated in my state, regularly has the mayor and governor drop by, is the most evil place on earth. Pretty much this. I went to college with a guy who was homeless, and he said the amount of women who get raped is just staggering. The police don't care and the women just have to live with it because there is nothing they can do. He said it was worse with younger girls. Sometimes they would get picked up and would never be seen again. He didn't know if they were killed or just moved off the streets in with someone.